Andrew Gibson. I'm president of the Online News Association Club here. Our other exec members are around. Wave. Just a few things before we get started. We are the school's digital journalism club, so this is actually like pretty typical of what we do, workshops, things like this. So please follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, so you can find out about future stuff like this. We'd love to see you here. That's point one. Point two is that we are going to be electing a new executive board come late April or May. So if you're interested in leadership position like that, definitely keep us in mind. And also, if you're feeling a bit cluttered in here, we do have a live stream of this same presentation around there. So feel free to walk out and around and you can see the same thing. And with that, we can go ahead and get started then, and I'll introduce Professor David Herzog here, who is a data and mapping genius. He's very closely affiliated with the National Institute for Computer Assisted Reporting, academic advisor, right?
Right.
And if you really like what you do here today, you should definitely take Computer Assisted Reporting, which is J4430. It's a deep dive into data journalism. So with that, I will turn it over.
Okay. Thanks, Andrew. And I'm really glad that I can be here to lead you guys through this today, because I know that we've been trying to do this since last semester, but the planets just haven't aligned in terms of scheduling this. So I'm really happy to see a big room full of people who want to learn how to create interactive maps. So first thing that I want to do is have everybody download the data that we're going to use, just in case we run into any issues with Mizzou Wireless. Has that ever been learned? So, it'll take a while to download it possibly. So you can go to my website, which is dherzog.com. And then the first blog item there is a post with the data. Oh, I'm getting service unavailable. And then you can download that as a zipped file, and then you'll have to uncompress that. It has two files inside it. One's a file with information about earthquakes, and the other is about nuisance parties in Columbia, Missouri. All right, so before we actually have our exciting, action-packed, build your own Google Fusion table map exercise, I wanted to go through just some concepts of interactive mapping and also show you guys some examples of really good interactive maps that have been created over the past couple of years by data journalists. Interactive mapping has been a really big thing ever since somebody created the Chicago crime map, taking Chicago crime data and then mashing it up on a Google map several years ago. And that was actually done by a Mizzou grad by the name of Adrian Holabody. And that was like a huge deal because technically you couldn't even do that. Google would not allow you to mash up stuff on their own maps, according to Google's own terms of service. But people were doing this because they could do it, and they wanted to try and present information in different ways. And the really cool thing is that we've really come a long way since those years when people were figuring out how to put simple points on maps. Interactive maps have gotten really a lot more complicated, and there are all kinds of mapping tools that we'll take a look at later that run the gamut from very simple Google Maps to things that you need to know coding language to do. So we'll talk about that a little bit. So why do we create maps in the first place? Well, it's an extension of the data journalism that we're already doing. And Andrew mentioned my computer-assisted reporting class. In computer-assisted reporting, the thing that we do is we learn how to identify data, how to obtain it, how to evaluate it to make sure that we know the holes in it, how to analyze it, and also to visualize it. So there's this whole process in data journalism that we're working with these data files and trying to find meaning in those files as journalists and learning how to present that information. So there's a solid foundation of doing computer-assisted reporting, and mapping is one of the tools that we put on top of that. Also, we create maps because it helps us uncover new knowledge. There are some things that we can't understand very well just by looking at a data table, either in a spreadsheet or in a database program like Access or MySQL. There's some things that really need to be expressed on a map. Another reason why we create maps is people just get maps. I mean, you can look at a map and orient yourself on the map where you are and understand what the story is. Or hopefully you can understand what the story is, because maps are a great framing tool. Also, maps are a really good framing tool for audience participation and engagement. And we'll see some examples of that too. Journalists are building maps as ways to share information with the audience and have the audience provide information. So that's an emerging trend too in mapping. So in terms of where mapping fits in, like I said, we have all these computer-assisted reporting tools. We start out learning how to use spreadsheets, and we're doing that in car class right now. Very simple math, sorting and filtering and things like that. And then we also use database managers to do more complicated data analysis. Some of you probably have used statistical software like SPSS to work with data tables in stats classes. And also there are these programs called geographic information systems, which allow us to analyze data geographically. These GIS programs are not online mapping tools. The common denominator with all these computer-assisted reporting tools, including interactive maps, is two-dimensional data. It's stuff that's stored in columns and rows. So, I like to joke in class often that this is kind of like boring stuff. We have columns, rows, and information gets filled out in it. But this is really what drives data journalism, including interactive mapping for the most part. This kind of structured data. And so we're going to take a look at some examples of maps that have used, some interactive maps that have been appeared in the news lately. And we're actually going to look at, first off, 2 examples from Missourian. This one was done by John McClure, who was a grad student recently, and he was taking a look at Columbia police traffic stops. And he wanted to try to answer the question, were Columbia police actually pulling over black drivers more frequently than white drivers, and why was this occurring? Was this for racial reasons? Was this for geographic reasons? And so what John did as part of his story was he did a lot of data analysis using GIS mapping programs. He ran these analyses that made my head hurt, that I had never done before, and that were really complicated, to try and do spatial statistics and figure out relationships between different things. And as part of this, John created an interactive on the Missourian website. Which is actually still live here, that you can go to and create your own maps that show you different pieces of information from his analysis. So first, what you could do, take a look at the traffic stops. And then what John did is he shaded in the areas that had high concentrations. The areas that were orange were the ones that were kind of off the charts high. So this was a very good storytelling tool, being able to say to the audience, okay, here's where the police are pulling drivers over at a higher rate than other areas. And what John did was he did really a lot of complex mapping where he was doing geocoding, which is turning street addresses into points, and then going into GIS programs and doing a lot of aggregating and math on it. So this took John, pretty much the whole semester to work on this project, and also to create the mapping. He was using a tool called Mapbox to create this map, and we'll take a look at Mapbox in a little bit. So you could go in and you can say, okay, where are the black driver stops in Columbia? So pretty much goes throughout the first ward area there. Stops of white drivers, still in the first ward, but also out of there. So there are a lot of different ways that John presented the data to the Missourians' audience. Another map that ran at the Missourian a few years ago that was done by some students in my car class. And this was looking at a recall campaign for a former city councilman, Darrell Dudley. And people were angry at Darrell Dudley because he was voting for a particular redistricting plan for the city council boards in Columbia. And they were extremely angry because they thought that his plan was bad, that the guy was doing it strictly to protect his own political destiny in terms of election results. And so what a team of reporters in my class did was they built this map that showed different areas of Columbia and the home locations of folks who signed petitions to have him recalled. There was never a recall. What happened was there was a petition drive. People turned the petitions into the city clerk's office, and Dudley eventually reversed his vote, so people did not press on with the recall attempt. So what the students did, what they had to do is they got a hold of paper copies of the reports of the petitions, and they actually typed that into a database, which was then turned into this map. So they did a lot of their own data entry for this particular project. And so this shows you where people signed. Let's see. And you could actually click on the different points, and you could see, oh, that's Frank. No. Jody L. Frank. So, and the street address. So you could get an idea. And one of the things that was part of the story, as you could see that the petition drive, a lot of the people who had signed this live in the old Southwest area, which was an area at odds with Dudley because he was conservative, and this is a politically liberal area. So you could see the geographic distribution, which was a nice thing about this map. And the students who put this together, they used a mapping tool called GeoCommons, which is a free online mapping platform that I'll show you guys in a little bit. That's actually very powerful for doing more complicated maps like this. One thing you'll notice that there are many layers here, and there are also controls for the layers and the legends. So the user has a lot of control over this map, what layers to show, how to shade it, and things like that. Where when you create a Google Fusion table, it's you have very little control over how the map appears, unless you have some knowledge of programming. This map was done by WNYC, which is a public radio station in New York City, and they were taking a look at Mayor Bloomberg's controversial program of stop and frisk, in which police in New York would stop people randomly on the street and frisk them, and then make arrests if they had found guns. And one of the big things about the stop and frisk policy that was found by news organizations was that this was targeted at minority neighborhoods and also minorities in other areas. So it was kind of like a social control policy that the police had. So what WNYC did was they got data by, let's see, oh, they got mapping data by census block, and they were able to show the areas that had the most stops per block. So as you go from blue to pink, the pink areas are the ones with higher numbers, where you have anywhere from 100 to more than 400 stops in a block in 2011. It's just 1 year's worth of data. So it gives you an idea of where there are high numbers of these. If we were doing this, we probably would want to have some context for this. For instance, this could just be a map that shows residential population. There are a lot of people there. So we would also want to bring in, maybe do a rate, like how many stops per population in each block, to bring in some more context there. See if this is still live. And you can actually, as you can see, you can click on these census blocks and get the total number of stops. Again, this is all built into a data file that they used in their mapping program. The Boston Globe created this interactive map that shows you different spots along the marathon course. So, of course, the Globe does a lot of coverage of the marathon, and they created this so you could click on different mile markers, and then down here you get a Google map that centers on where that mile marker is and shows you the area around it. This was a really interesting project by the LA Times, and not many news organizations have done this. So they got data about street repairs and the quality of the streets. So they were able to assign to each street segment, which is a gargantuan task because there are a lot of street segments in Los Angeles, and we can then hover over those segments and figure out how bad each street segment is. So, I would imagine this kind of thing is very popular because LA is very much a car culture town, and people are always in their cars and driving over the streets and probably saying, I wonder, how bad this street is. So, this is a really good project for Southern California. I will probably point out that two of the two reporters, Ben Poston and Ben Welsh, who worked on this, are both Mizzou grads. They got their master's degrees here and worked on the NICAR database library. So, these were guys who specialize in data, while they were here at the J School. The LA Times does a lot of mapping. They have a project where they just have, you can go to the website and you can find maps of LA neighborhoods and then get information about crime, about the schools in those neighborhoods. So they're using the maps as kind of a navigational tool to point you toward information that you might want to look up.
There's a really big project called the Homicide Report, which is also Times.
Oh, is it? Okay.
And it uses a lot of GIS data mapping out homicides and pretty interesting.
Project. Speaking of homicides, this is homicides from, thank you, John,
Yeah.
from the Chicago Tribune. And they've been doing, homicides are a huge problem in Chicago too, so they've been creating a lot of maps that automatically update with new homicide reports. So you can see for Chicago, points for where the homicides occurred. So again, this is, news organizations are, they report on crime all the time. This is a new way of reporting on crime and framing that information. This is called Quiet City Map. And New York is not a quiet city. If you've ever been there, you know that. And so what they did was they put this map up and they said, hey, New York Times readers, tell us your favorite quiet spots in the city. So you can actually click on there to add your favorite quiet spot. And then you'll add some information about that. So this is it's really it's a good way to get people on your site giving you information and feeling like they have a stake in presenting information. This is a New York Times dialect map. Has everybody seen this? This was a big deal last year, and you take this 25 question quiz, and then you say, okay, what do you call that road that you drive on? I call it a highway. And then when you get done, it gives you your personalized map here that tells you what your dialect is. So I'm Philadelphia, New York, Yonkers. So this was again, audience engagement. People loved it. People shared it. I think it was either the top or the second top most visited part of the New York Times website, including stories in all of 2013. So,
and it was only up the last 10 days of the year.
Was it? Okay. So it really shows you the power that these audience engagement. Seattle Times did some really good reporting recently on methadone. And methadone is a replacement for people who are heroin addicts and need to have a drug for maintenance. And what was happening was in Washington State, because methadone is inexpensive, the doctors who treat patients who are on public assistance in the public health system, they do that to save money. Even though there are other drugs that are better and less lethal. So what they did was they mapped all the methadone deaths since 2003, more than 2003 on. And then what they also did was they overlay that on an income map. So you can see that in the high income areas, which are the darker green, there are very few deaths over there. But in the poor areas over here, the methadone deaths are concentrated there. So it kind of gives you a visual correlation between the two. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution has been doing a lot of really good, aggressive reporting into cheating on standardized tests. And they got school test data that schools have to report to states every year. And what they did was they ran these algorithms which said, okay, looks like there's cheating going on at these schools. And so they created a map where you could go and then click on that and get information about schools with suspicious gains or decreases in test scores. So, this is a Google map based, and they were able to integrate videos with that too. So they do little tours of the schools. Reuters recently did a big project on the unequal distribution of income in the United States. And one way they chose to tell the story was that show the income disparity over the years. Of course, bubbles getting bigger is never good, so that's growing income disparity. And then the size of the bubbles also told you about what, how severe the income disparity was in each area. This one from the San Francisco Chronicle is not like a heavy, hard-hitting news story. They created this really cool map that was called the Literary City, because San Francisco has so many authors, bookstores, and things like that. Such a rich history that one of the things that they wanted to tell their audience was about the different places where history was made in terms of writers, readings of books, bookstores, and things like that. So you could find out book reading, like reading of Allen Ginsberg's Howl, was at this location.
Yeah.
So you can explore different literary events here. And then USA Today, USA Today does a lot of mapping because USA Today is a newspaper that's made basically for business travelers. So they always want to orient people toward what's going on at home. That's why if you go to USA Today, the printed product, they always have those state digests in there for the news. And so they have a lot of state demographic information. So they did a really good presentation for the 2010 census, for example, where you could choose your state and then you get more detailed look at it over there. And there's this mapping. Oh, this was actually, this slide should not be in here. Ignore this slide, please. So we're going to move on now to talk about the different mapping platforms and tools that are out there. There are so many out there that kind of makes your head hurt because it's hard to choose from them. So I'm going to try to go from the tools that are the simplest tools to the more complex tools. One of the simplest tools that's out there is called Batch Geo, and Batch Geo allows you to put spreadsheet data in there that has street address, city, state, and zip. And then what Batch Geo will do is it will throw it against a geocoding engine, and it will give you a map that shows you all the points on the map. So yes, it's just as easy as copying and pasting it in here. You could use the sample data and just like that. It creates a very, very basic Google mapping. But it's also a good tool for doing geocoding because what it does, it also produces a file for you that after you take the street addresses, throw it against the geocoder, it gives you latitude and longitude, which you can then use in other mapping platforms. So people use it journalists use it for quick and easy geocoding. Google has this mapping tool called My Places. And My Places is just a very simple way in your Google account. You can point and click on the map, create points, and also annotate it with information. But in fact, Fox Magazine did this a few years ago. There's a big event in Columbia called the National Bikers Roundup that brought a lot of people to town. And what they wanted to do was create a map that people could see where they can go drink and eat. Google Docs has map gadgets, so you can have a Google Docs spreadsheet, and then it's very easy to generate a map that looks like that. Google also has this thing called the Public Data Explorer, and the Public Data Explorer has a lot of data that's baked in. Yeah. So you can do things like look at unemployment rate and then hit play, and then it goes through a timeline and it animates that information by county. So there's a lot of data that's already in there, but you can also upload your own data into the Public Data Explorer. IBM has a visualization tool called Many Eyes. How many of you have used this for something? Okay. It's pretty easy to use. In fact, they've just overhauled the interface, so they have a newer and easier way to interact with it. But you can do things like bar charts, scatter plots. They also allow you to create maps like this, which are not loading fast enough for me, so we're going to move on. There's a mapping platform called ArcGIS Online, and ArcGIS Online is provided by a company called Esri, and Esri makes geographic information system programs. So what they've been doing is they've been pretty much like a desktop-based analysis program, but they've been really investing heavily into tools for making interactive maps that you can embed in your website, interactive geocoding and things like that. So it's really becoming a more robust tool for making interactive maps. There's also a program that we saw before called GeoCommons Maker, and that was the tool that my students used to do the Darrell Dudley recall map, which has since been bought by Esri, the maker of Arc Online. But GeoCommons Maker is a very, very, very robust program that allows you to have a lot of control over your interactive maps. This map was created by the Toronto Star for their, I guess it was their bike to work week, and they created a map of bike accidents in Toronto. Tableau Public also has mapping built into it. Tableau Public is a really, really great desktop visualization program. Unfortunately, for most of you in this room, you've never heard of it because it's available for Macs only at this point.
PCs only.
PCs only, right. So Mac version is coming out soon. But it allows you to create different maps in your dashboard and then publish them on the web. So I created a map of hogs and people in southwest Missouri because I couldn't think of anything else to do when I did this. So it shows you hog operations from the Department of Agriculture and population data by maybe zip code. And apparently hogs are not scaring away people, and hog operations are not scaring people away. So those are some of the kind of the basic interactive mapping tools. Then there are some more advanced mapping tools that you could graduate to. There's this really, really great program called Mapbox, and this is what John McClure used to create that map of the traffic stops. The thing with Mapbox is that it has its own scripting language, so you have to be familiar with HTML and CSS to really be able to use it. So, somebody like me who's just kind of like really basic HTML, I would not be able to use it, but if you guys know that stuff, you could work with it pretty easily. On the same level as CartoDB, this is Mapbox is a free program. CartoDB is paid, but they also have a freemium model where you can get free maps. Then there are JavaScript libraries. So these are libraries that allow you to extend the JavaScript program, which I know is taught by Rob in the Multimedia Planning and Design class. And this one is called Leaflet, and it allows you to create pretty beautiful maps through JavaScript. Another JavaScript library is Raphael. Then for people who are Python programmers and also JavaScript programmers, there's something called Cartograph. So, this is definitely stuff that's kind of more on the higher end that you have to have the programming chops to use. So, I am at the end of the presentation here. I have my contact information. Also, if you want to get to the bookmarks for this presentation, I posted them on Delicious at delicious.com/dherzog/ONA-map14. And now we get to the exciting building a map part of the program. So, has everybody downloaded the data files? Okay. If you haven't downloaded the data files, again, you can get them on my blog at dherzog.com. All right, so let's go ahead and let's open these files. Let's first take a look at the nuisance party, the nuisance data. So you can go ahead and open that in Excel just to take a look at it. And this is this was obtained by one of my students in the car class. They got this from the Columbia Police Department shortly after the city passed the nuisance party law back in 2007. And it gives the address of the nuisance party and also the date. One of the things that's really important when you're working with fusion tables is that you have to have the entire address in one column. So if you have street address in one column, city, state in another column, it ain't going to work. It all has to be put together in that one column. So you might have to do some data formatting, or in Excel we call it concatenating. You jam this stuff together and put it all in there. So you might have to do that to get into that state. And then anything that you want to have in your pop-ups on your map, those go into your data columns. So what you really need to do is you really need to just have the columns that you want to display in your map. If you have a spreadsheet that has something like 25 columns in it, I'm betting that you don't want to show all those columns. So you would want to delete those columns before you went and created a map. So you want to keep it pretty tight. So let's go ahead. Let's close the nuisance spreadsheet. And then let's all go into our Google Drive account. So Google Drive is a place where we go to create the fusion tables. And the way we create a fusion table is in your Drive, go ahead and click on the Create button. And if you hit the Create, you may or may not see fusion tables listed. Do you have fusion tables or no? All right, so you've got to set that up by going to Connect More Apps. And then you can just search the apps for fusion tables and then add that one. I'm just going to click on Fusion Tables and get to the screen that walks us through it. All right, so we're getting this import new table wizard. So let's import, from this computer, and then go find the nuisance file. And then this is a comma-separated values file. So comma-separated values files, instead of having everything nicely arranged in columns, CSV files have commas that mark where the column break should go. So it says, we should say separator character is the comma. And then click next. And then we're going to get a preview of the data. Something happened where this file got duplicated, column names. So we're just going to keep column names are in row 1. So those are going to become the headers for the table that we're building. And here's where we can add metadata. So does everybody know what metadata is? Data about our data. That's so awesome. We could change the table name here. We can control whether somebody exports this. We can attribute the data to Columbia Police Department. So generally as journalists, these are all good things that we like to do, right? We like to be complete about describing what we have and doing that. But just for the purposes now, we're going to skip that because we're so excited and we want to finish this. Let's click Finish. And so everybody should see something that looks like this. And then to create a map, this is not very intuitive. We click on the little teeny tiny red plus sign. I want a big plus sign because I'm excited about this, and I don't want this teeny tiny stuff. So plus sign, then add map. There we go. I know what the problem is. Getting an error here. So I want to go back to my table and go ahead and delete that row. So delete the first row. It's Fusion Tables is getting confused by seeing that first row and not having a mappable address in it. I kind of feared that. Oh, it's working. It's not working for me. Is it working for everybody else?
If you change the type of row, it's going to work for you.
Okay.
You have to actually drop down and change the location.
I'm sorry. What do you do?
Drop down in that little triangle next to rows 1. Go to. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. It's not there. It's in the address field below there.
Okay.
So the address field, that little drop down
okay.
icon you're getting, change. And then the type instead of text needs to be location.
Okay.
It's either type or format, I forget which.
All right. So the fix, if you screw things up like me, happens all the time. So, thank goodness that we have other people who know this stuff. So we can hit the drop down near address, then change, and then under type, location. Yay, okay. So the telltale sign when we have something that's a good mappable format is highlighted in yellow. Does everybody see that? Good. The other thing I was going to do if this didn't work, I was going to just go back to the original Excel file and redo some stuff in there. So we have mappable addresses, and if we click on the Map 1 tab, it starts geocoding. So it's taking each one of those addresses that it sees in the table, throwing it against Google's geocoding service, and returning latitude and longitude.
I tried, yes.
I wonder if the server's saying, a lot of people are coming from the same IP.
Here's a little floaty.
We may just be bombing Mizzou wireless.
Yeah.
That's true,
Trying
yeah.
to hit the web.
But I promise you, when this is done, it'll be great. So it's going to be worth the wait of geocoding.
It's exciting watching it.
I know. Yeah.
If you put a website in one of the Excel tables, then when this comes up and you click on it, would it have a hyperlink to
Yes.
a website?
Yep.
So you can't do an embed? Did I hear you right? Back up there.
You can put a URL in your spreadsheet, and then that'll create a hyperlink then when you do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about international addresses or even specific addresses?
I don't know the answer to that.
I'll have to test it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've never geocoded outside the U.S. All right, so here we have our map. We could zoom in on, and we could say, hey, there are a lot of nuisance parties around south part of town, East Campus, and then you can click on the points, and it tells you the address and also the date of the party. If you want to, you can choose to publish the map. If you go into Tools and Publish, and then you can get an embed code that you can use to put in your CMS or your blog. So you can actually put this map on your system. So if you go into Tools and then Change Map, here's where we have options to say, I don't like red points for my map. I can change the style to one of the bunch that they give you.
Can you render out a high-res version of whatever map you have up on the screen? For print? For posters?
I don't think it.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. And then another thing you can do is with the legend. Actually, you can go to Change Info window, and here's where you control what appears in the pop-up window. I'm sure you guys all know how to edit HTML, so you can go in, custom in, and you can change what it says here. And then if you want to do really fancy things with Fusion tables, it usually involves more programming. But this is like the real basic, quick and dirty way you can create a Fusion table. Any questions before we do one more? Does everybody want to do one more, Matt? Okay.
Question?
Yeah.
Is there any way to put multimedia in the little pop-up things, like a picture or a video or something like that? Is that just with the HTML where you are right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Herzog, just to say for the live stream, can you repeat the question just so we
Oh.
know people don't like
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. The question is there a way that you can put multimedia in there, such as videos or images? And yes, you can. You can put those in your HTML.
Okay, just using the change info window box right there?
Yes.
Okay.
And in fact, the story that was done by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, I don't know if it's up here anymore, but they did that. So you can,
Oh, I see, okay.
you can get a video of the schools that they went to as part of their cheating investigation.
That's exactly what I wanted to.
All right, so we're going to next create a map showing earthquake locations. So that's the other file that we downloaded, the quakes.csv file. And again, this is a comma-separated file. It tells us, among other things, the time, latitude and longitude, and also the magnitude of the earthquake. So we can use the latitude and longitude to plot this in a fusion table map. So if ever you're working on a project and you can get data with lat long in it, that's good for, for fusion tables and most other mapping platforms. So let's go ahead and let's go back to our your own drive. So back to your drive, then create again. And this time you should see fusion tables listed in your options, right? So it should be there forever. Then click fusion table. Then go ahead and upload the quakes.csv, which it recognizes as comma separated. Then click next. And then it shows us the headers, so click next. And if we were being good citizens, we would fill out our metadata box here. We're going to skip that and just click finish. So that's brought that in. And then we should just be able to click on the map of latitude. And then it shows us the locations of earthquakes from the past 30 days around the world. And this data was downloaded from the U.S. Geological Survey earthquake site.
So here there's no street address with lat long.
Right.
Gets you the international.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool.
Wow. California, Alaska, they get a lot of earthquakes. And you can click on those and get data about the earthquake. So, obviously, if you were doing this for an audience, you wouldn't want to have everything in here. You wouldn't want to have the latitude, longitude. Maybe you would just want to show like the magnitude and the date and the time. That might be the most relevant information. But you could edit all that information in the display box, or even before you upload your table, you could take some stuff out if you wanted to.
Is there a way to make the map itself look different? Or is that's just a map, right?
You can. My understanding is that you can get satellite imagery or the regular map imagery.
And there's the button on the upper right next to map. At your 2 o'clock satellite. Underneath that.
Okay. And you can also create a heat map and see just kind of, I don't know how much the heat map tells you, except that, we already saw that there were a lot of earthquakes in California, but. Okay, so that's how to create fusion table maps. You guys just made 2 of them in about 15 minutes. So that's pretty quick and great. Again, if you want to modify these, you do need to learn some more programming skills and things like that. But the basic fusion table map is getting data in the right format, uploading it, making sure that it's mappable, and then just going through that wizard to get to your map.
But again, the output, looking at what you have, you basically have to screenshot it, right? If you want like a
Probably,
static
yeah.
shot or something like that.
Right, because the whole, what they're doing is they're providing you a way to create an interactive map.
Yeah.
They're not thinking about something
Printing.
flat. Yeah.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions? Everybody gonna go home and make maps tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we just embed this map we do here, will it have copyright issues?
No.
Oh, that's good.
No, Google allows it to be used. So, yeah, no copyright issues at all. Unless you're using data that's like proprietary data or something like that, then you would have to do that, or at least attribute it to your source.
Any questions from back here? All right, well, big hand for Mr. Herzog. And quick informal survey. How many of you found out about this event from an email that went around in Facebook? Okay, where did you see the email?
It was, I heard of the MBA program, and then so it just came into one of the things